What about corrections? Pullbacks and corrections are normal, right? This is just a normal part of the investing world is having, in fact, we call them healthy. Do you know that there has been a drawdown or a fall of 10% or worse in 65% of all years since 1928? So going back about 100 years. Corrections of 5% or worse occur almost every single year. So it's actually more surprising if you don't have a 5 or 10% correction than if you do. So this goes back with Roger Federer again to keep that analogy going. Of course, he's going to double fall, right? It's just going to happen. So it's more surprising to us if the market doesn't have these 5 and 10% corrections than if it does. We just need to know to expect them, and that's normal and that's natural. Where does that lead us today, right? If you look at historically, the market falls 3% about 7 times a year, right? This tells us how often these types of declines happen. We've only really had 1 or 2 of these so far this year in 2024, so let's keep that in mind. Normally, the market falls about 5%, about 3 to 4 times a year. Again, we've only had 1 of these so far this year. A 10% correction happens about once a year on average. We haven't had one yet. And then the more severe corrections, as you can see here, don't happen as often. 15% about every other year. And those bear markets that we talk about and get so focused on happen about once every 3 to 4 years, if you look at it. So what this tells us is, one, volatility is we have to accept that volatility to get that success. We have to accept a double fault every once in a while to get that 80 to 90% win rate. One thing we were happy with it, and this sounds strange, is last week we had the first 2% fall in the market in over 356 days. This chart, there's a lot going on here in this chart, but what you see, it charts how long the market has gone before without a 2% fall. And if you look historically, we typically go about 100 days or so between a 2% drop in the market. We just went through a time period where we tripled that. We went 356 days without a 2% correction or fall in the market in one day. We had one last week. That makes us breathe easier because we know these corrections are going to come. Let's let them come and just understand that that's part of the market, right? That's what our job is in planning, is to know they're going to come and have a plan for them. So on the volatility front, right, to tie it back into Roger Federer, we know we're going to have double faults. We can't avoid that. But if we can consistently stick to our game plan, we don't have to get as worried about those double faults because we know better points are coming as long as we stick to the script.